Hello, hello, and welcome back to Resurrected Podcast. I am your host, Keonna Hamlett, and in this episode, I'm going to do things different. Normally I use a scripture when I reference what I'm talking about. However, in this episode, I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to say that I'm not going to do it in the future episodes either, but in this particular episode, I'm not. And the reason why is because the goal of Resurrected Podcast is to go to higher levels in the spiritual realm. And the thing about the scriptures is while they are great and they are definitely full of time-tested wisdom, wonderful teachings within the scriptures. Like I always say, read and wait for revelation. You got to read between the lines because the scriptures were, translated. They went through so many hands before we even got to see them. So always make sure that you're reading and then waiting for revelation when you're going to read the scriptures. However, what I have come to realize is that God doesn't just speak to us through the scriptures. And when we are living this life, we have to be intelligent enough to understand that, well, if God was speaking to people when they wrote those scriptures, then clearly God must have not stopped talking. Like to think that the Bible is just the only place where God spoke to people and had them write it down is false. And so, and I believe that's why we see different religions, right? Because different religions are rooted in different texts. But the goal of all of them is to develop some sense of lawfulness, whether they actually, practice that, whether individual people actually practice lawfulness or not. Hey, I feel like, and I've said this in the past, a lot of people use religion just to shadow who they really are. And I've seen a lot of that in my life, people who say that they are this and that, and they just do some of the most wicked things behind the scenes. And maybe that's part of my beef with Christianity, and that's just because of the things that I've seen. And it's kind of hard to not feel so strongly about rejecting Christianity when I've seen so many Christians do the same things, but what I was saying is that I think that the overall goal of any religion is to properly articulate what they believe God wants them to do on earth, right? And so we can call God Allah, I'll call God Yahuwah. We can call God, I don't know, what's some other God names? I don't know. I don't even know too many God names, but we can call God whatever, but the religion in itself is trying to articulate what we believe that God wants us to do, right? And so that's the gist of it. And I think that we need to take a step back when we're looking at scriptures and remember that anything written down is something that was passed through a vessel. And so when it comes through that vessel, which is the person, we have to be aware that each vessel is going to have different perspectives, right? So we don't know none of them people who wrote their Bible. We don't know nothing about them. We don't know nothing about those scriptures. All we know is that these scriptures were given to us and told to be holy. Okay. Well, so how should we intelligently go about assessing these scriptures? Well, we should be using them as a reference, not so much something to live by verbatim. And I think that's where the issue of Christianity fell with me, because it's like there are so many people who will try to do things that are verbatim in the Bible, although it doesn't even align with humanity. And so at the end of the day, regardless of what our religion is that we choose to submit to, we all have a duty to serve humanity as humans. And I think that that's the whole point of all of this. So when we are talking about stepping back from scripture and just listening to the spirit of wisdom, like I talked about in the last episode, then we have to acknowledge that that is a very, very important task to do. Because times change. Evolution is a real thing. And so those scriptures were written by whoever at what time, whatever, and then people did their best to try to, dissect them, but we cannot ignore the truth that God is still speaking today. And we need to listen. So just as important as we need to practice, lawfulness and reminding ourselves, okay, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that as a protective measure for ourselves and others. The lawfulness is not just about just being, the goody two shoes. It's about protecting ourselves and others. So when we are creating societies where we're saying, okay, this is the standard and everybody should try to live to this standard, it protects not only our household, it protects our neighbor's household. And so that's where the whole root of lawfulness comes into. We want to live in a society where we sleep safe at night, no matter where we are in the world. So anyway, I say all that to say, in this episode, I want to talk about tapping into that voice even more. Because like I said in the last episode, I talked about, just listening to the spirit of wisdom, sitting in nature. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm actually outside. And so I hope that the background noise isn't too loud. But I love sitting outside and I love being outside and I love the way I flow when I'm outside. So that's why I decided to record this outside, and I'll probably do this moving forward because I just feel like I've unlocked a new level of peace, a new level of creativity when I sit in nature. It just unlocks, and I got my feet in the grass right now, So anyway, I'm not going by any scriptures. That's what I say all that to say, and I had to make sure that I drilled in on why I wasn't doing that. Not to take any value away from the scriptures, but to also highlight the truth, which is God speaks to us all day, every day through different mediums. And it's just up for us. It's up to us to be paying attention. Okay. So, excuse me. So in this episode, what I want to drill down into is the power of silence. So we talked about the power of, sitting in nature in the last episode. And this episode, I just want to talk about the power of silence. One thing I have noticed is that as a person who used to listen to music a lot of time throughout my day, like I literally would listen to music, and if I wanted to, I still can go sit and listen to music for 6 to 8 hours straight. Music was such a safe haven for me as a child and as a teenager. So as an adult, I just stuck to that, and I used to like to go to the club every weekend, because I just like to dance. Because when I was a child, a lot of the music that was out and popular, it was music you could dance to. They wasn't too vulgar. I'm talking about the mainstream, hip hop and R&B. It wasn't too vulgar. They didn't say stuff to where a child could easily catch on. They would talk in code so that even if, a song came on, they was talking about something sexual or whatever, the children didn't know, like peaches and cream. I didn't know what that was about until I became an adult. When I was a child, I really thought it was about peaches and cream, so there, it was a different time, but music was a safe haven for me. And so one thing that I've had to decode myself from doing recently is I've had to stop myself from listening to so much music, because what I have found is that by constantly listening to music as a safe haven, we are ignoring the necessity to feed our intelligence. And so while we could really like wrap ourselves in a cocoon of music every day when we're not working or when we're not doing, what we should be doing, our responsibilities, and never learn and never grow, unless it's really forced upon us. And so I've witnessed people who have went their whole lives, and every time they get free time, they're doing one of two things. They are listening to music or they're watching television. That's it. And I've witnessed how people can go their whole lives using their free time to listen to music or watch television and never grow beyond what's forced upon them. So like, okay, us going to school until the 12th grade, well, that's forced upon us, right? Most people, well, a lot of people, they're only going to go to school to high school, and then they're going to stop learning. Okay? Then you got some people who they were forced to go to college. Maybe not, with a gun to their head, but, by verbal conditioning of the people around them. So they were conditioned to go to college. So they went to college, and so they were forced to do that. Okay, got that 4-year degree, or, got the MBA, or even in some cases got their doctorate. Okay, boom. They did that. All right, done. That's where they stop learning. And then after they do that, then they spend all their free time, watching TV and listening to music. But what I'm trying to say is most people only learn where they are forced to learn, and it prevents people from growing beyond those limitations. And this is why so many people are predictable. So many people are predictable because the learning habits are similar across different people. So when I can look at a person and say, oh, I bet that they're going to be doing X, Y, and Z 5 years from now. The reason why I can do that is because I can look at their habits of what they do in their leisure time, and it can tell me what they're going to be doing 5 years from now. So how does this apply to the power of silence? We need to normalize not listening to music in our free time, not watching movies in our free time, but sitting in silence and saying, okay, what are my biggest issues? Okay? And who do I need to become to be able to fix those issues? Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about spirit, we're talking about spirituality or whatever, that's really just referring to the essence of who we are. So somebody could look at me and they see a black woman. And they see I have, melanated skin. They see I have afro hair, and they can say, oh, that's a black woman. Okay. Well, that's just the physical part. But who I am is what you cannot see. And so that's really what the spirit is referring to. So this is how you can be around somebody and you could not feel comfortable around them. And it's because of the negative thoughts that they have about you, that they are hiding from you for whatever reason. And that's how you'll hear people say things like, oh, I felt it in my spirit. You tapped into what they're not showing, but what is beneath the surface. So the spirit is really the essence of who we are, the energy, the thoughts, the unspoken thoughts. And so when you can tap into that spirituality, well, when you can identify what spirituality is in a way that empowers you, then you can say, okay, so If I want to have X, Y, and Z, or do X, Y, and Z, or go X, Y, and Z, then I need to become a different person in spirit. My physical limitations are not going to be able to stop who I am in spirit. And so that's why it's important to take the time to sit in silence, to practice sitting in silence. Because what's going to happen is the more you sit in silence, the more you will open yourself up to ideas. And as those ideas flow, you should have a pen and a paper. And you should start writing them down. And then you should start putting some of those ideas into practice. And if you find that the ideas that you have are not producing you any value, notice I said value and not results. Because the ideas you start coming up with may not give you results right away, but it can give you value. And how do you know if something is giving you value? Well, you have to be able to recognize value. So how are you able to recognize value? You're able to recognize value when you start learning value. So that means that you need to take time when you're sitting in silence and also ask yourself, okay, well, we talked about what are my biggest issues? Who do I need to become? Okay, so you also need to ask yourself, okay, in order to become somebody, that means I need to know some things. So now the next question is, what do I need to learn? What do I need to learn to become this person? Because you can't become somebody without learning something, without learning how to think like that certain person. So the question is, okay, what do I need to learn? And then while you're sitting in that silence and you have your journal that you've been putting your ideas on, your notes or whatever, okay, if it's not coming together properly, if you're not getting actionable, if you're not getting inspired to take actions, then you need more information in your information bank. So ask yourself, what do I need to learn? And then sit and wait for those answers. Sit and wait. This is how to think 101. Ask yourself a question, wait for the answer. That's how you think. Ask yourself a question, write down the question, wait for the answer, wait for multiple answers, write down multiple answers, and then select the one that your intuition guides you to the most. And again, if your intuition is not guiding you towards things that are producing value, and if you don't know whether or not it's producing value, then you need to keep learning until you can identify whether or not whether or not the ideas you are producing are valuable. Because if you can't identify whether or not the ideas you're producing are valuable or not, then you're wasting your time. And you can't always depend on other people to tell you whether or not your ideas are valuable, because other people are only going to go off of their own experience and intelligence. And what if you are creating something that's very, very new? What if God is downloading something in you that the world has never seen? How you going to go to somebody else and ask them what they think? You can go to somebody and ask them what they think, but they're going to, if it's brand new, they're probably going to think you crazy. Because they don't have anything in their mind to see things the way you see it. Or even if they do, that don't mean they're going to believe in it the way you do. So, again, this is the power of silence. We have to normalize this, because if we don't normalize sitting in silence, waiting for those, or asking ourselves questions, waiting for those ideas, writing them down, putting them into practice, going back to the notebook later and saying, okay, what did I learn from this? Then what we'll have is a nation of people who are stagnated. We'll have a nation of people who are incompetent. We'll have a nation that is not growing. We'll have a nation of people that don't know how to think for themselves. So we don't want that. And this goes across all races. I'm not just speaking to black people. I'm not just speaking to, that's not who I am. I'm speaking to every person in the world, whether you're black, white, Asian, whatever. This is important because if we only have a few thinkers, a few people who are able to embrace silence and think on a regular basis in this world, then those are the very few people who are moving the world forward. imagine the type of world that we could live in if we had more people who sat and thought and learned, increased their quality of learning, who embrace silence so that they're not on a constant loop. And that's just what I was trying to say in saying all that. I noticed that by listening to music as much as I used to, it actually kept me in a behavior loop. And you don't want that. You don't want that. And that's why you see a lot of people in behavior loops, because, like I said earlier, they're doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing when in their free time every time. Every time. And that's how you can look at a person and you can easily, you can easily predict. Yeah, you can easily predict what their life is going to be like in 5 to 10 years. Some things may change. They might change houses. They might change cars. They might change jobs, get a little promotion here and there. But most people don't see drastic change because of their habits of not sitting in silence. If you want to see drastic change, if you want to live as the most empowered version of yourself, if you want to be somebody who is a version better than the one that you are sitting in right now, then you have to develop yourself, and you have to develop yourself into a person who knows how to sit in silence, who knows how to sit in nature, who knows how to think their own thoughts, who knows how to cultivate their thoughts. You cultivate your thoughts by what you consume. So what are you reading? Are you reading? Because if you're not reading, you should be reading every day. You should be reading something every day. And I'm not talking about a Facebook post, Instagram. No. Go read a blog every day. You can read a blog in 10 minutes. You should be reading something every day. What you're doing by doing that is you're cultivating your thoughts. So let's look at it like this. And not just reading, you have to also think about what you're watching, what you're listening to. All that stuff determines the quality of the thoughts that you are going to get when you do sit in silence. Okay? So let me say that again. You want to ensure that your quality of thoughts will be something that will give you value. Earlier I said to learn, but I'm gonna be more surgical. It's not just about learning, it's about cultivating. So if you want to have billion-dollar thoughts, then you need to go be listening to conversations of people who are dealing with billion-dollar money. What are their thought processes? What do they think? What are they doing? What type of work do they do? Okay, so when you start sitting in on those conversations, watching the panels, watching the conferences, listening to the podcasts, reading the blogs that have that all the leaders in that industry are reading, you're going to start to create new thought patterns that you didn't have before. Okay, and so that's going to help you be able to craft better ideas. So again, sit in silence, journal your ideas. Well, ask yourself, what is it that you want to do? Do you want to fix a problem? Do you want to get something that you don't have? Do you want to go, whatever it is, ask yourself a question and then wait for the answers to start coming. Write them down. And then use your intuition. Let your intuition guide you to the best idea to take in that moment. And don't always expect whatever you do in that moment to get you the results you want immediately. Sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. If it doesn't, it's okay. It's going to be a learning experience. You know what you need to do? If it doesn't, go back, do the same thing again after you learn. And so what I mean by learning is really you're cultivating your quality of thoughts by being very, very particular about what you put into your mind. So, for example, if I want to be somebody who is, like if I want to be a CIO, which is a chief information officer for a company, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start reading all the CIO blogs. I'm going to start reading all the, well, not all of them. Not all of them. Let me not exaggerate. I'm going to pick maybe about 5 to 6 blogs to rotate through to that other CIOs are reading. Okay, how do you know what other CIOs are reading? Well, a lot of people ain't gonna tell you what they're reading because that's their unique edge. So you can either go Google what the top CIO blogs are, or you can listen to CIOs talk in their interviews. You can listen to them talk in their summits, in their conventions. Those people, when they're talking, they're sharing their thought processes. And so if you want to become something, you need the thought process. Okay? So you want to just immerse yourself into content of people who are already doing what you're doing, but making sure that they don't have an incentive to lie to you. Okay? So people who work for a business as a CIO, they have no incentive to lie to other people about what they're doing, how they're thinking, right? Now, like I said, some people might not tell you every little thing they're doing, but they're going to share some gems. Why is that? Well, because think about business like this. A lot of businesses are owned by a lot of the same different people. So if I own stock in Amazon and I own stock in Microsoft, I would want my CIO at Amazon to talk to my CIO at Microsoft. Let them know what problems. Let both of them, say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's going on in the tech space here. This is what's going on in tech space there. I'm having a problem with XYZ, whatever. And what they're going to do is maybe the CIO at Amazon is going to be able to share stuff that they are doing that has helped their business with the CIO at Microsoft. Again, this is the chief information officer. This is the executive person who would be the head of technology, right? So maybe the CIO at Amazon might have some experience that can help the CIO at Microsoft make that company better, make that company's technology better. So if I'm an investor in both of these companies, then yes, I want those CIOs to throw out ideas off of each other. So when you think about business like that, then you have to understand that these people, they have a duty to each other to help each other, because a lot of there's very few people who just invest in one company. When you're talking about investors, most investors invest in multiple companies. So when you have a company competing against each other, a lot of times it's friendly competition, because it's like, okay, we're competing, but we're also learning from each other. We're actually helping each other. It looks like a competition on the surface, but honestly, we're really helping each other, because they're pushing the needle, and as they push the needle, it challenges me. Say, oh, well, maybe I need to push the needle too. And so they're going to bounce ideas off each other. So if I'm a person who wants to be a CIO, I'm going to tap into all those conversations to which they're sharing those their thought processes. I'm going to stay up to date with those, but then I'm also going to be learning new stuff, because that's going to be my unique edge. And again, that's why I said some people might not tell everybody everything that they're reading, because there are some things that some leaders tap into together as a whole, but then there are things that give each leader their own unique edge. So me personally, what I would do, whatever it is I'm trying to become, right? I'm going to find conferences. I'm going to find videos on of conferences, talks, panels of people who are in that actual position or in close proximity to it. Because you can also learn from people I can learn from a CEO, even though I don't really want to be a CEO, but me learning from a CEO is going to help me understand more of the business aspect, and help me understand, okay, if I'm a CIO, how can I best help the CEO of my company do their job? Because that's all business is. So we want to tap into those conversations, get those thought processes right, and then also have our own individual reading as far as technology and as far as leadership that is going to give us our own unique edge, so that we can, when we do come to the table, we're not just repeating everything somebody else says, but we are a unique player at that table. And so that's how you would cultivate your thoughts. So again, to recap, you want to cultivate your thoughts by cultivating the content you consume. And that's what's going to come to you when you're sitting at the table with your notebook and your pen, and you're sitting there saying, okay, and you've asked yourself that question, and you're waiting for ideas to come. You want to create a pipeline of good ideas that are going to help you. Then you need to cultivate your learning. So particularly, not even just your learning, cultivate everything that you consume, even in your leisure time. Cultivate everything that's going to give you good quality of thoughts. And you cannot do any of this without embracing the power of silence. And so that was the main point of this episode today. And I know that the sound, is going to vary because, like I said, I'm outside. But I really hope that you take away how the power of silence can really, truly, truly, truly help you in your life. Not even just to become a better person, become a richer person, a happier person. Because one thing I've realized is that we battle our own limitations. And the limitations that we are battling are limitations that other people try to place on us. And a lot of our life, we just go by accepting them because we never really get taught how to think. Well, I just taught you how to think. And so now you don't have to accept other people's limitations on you anymore. You get to create your own. And so now the question is, what are you going to limit yourself to do? And what are you going to take the cap off of so that you can do it even more greater? Okay, that's what I want you to walk away with. So again, my name is Keonna Hamlett. That's all I have for you today in this episode of Resurrected Podcast. I really do hope that this episode blesses you and makes you start thinking about ways that you can utilize and leverage the power of silence to be the best version of yourself and to live your wildest dreams, because I can tell you that I am doing it. And I'm so excited about what I'm going to create in my life. And I pray and I hope that you stick along for the long journey that we have ahead. It's going to be a fun one. But I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful to be alive and to be realizing what I'm realizing, to be learning what I'm learning, to be seeing what I'm seeing, and to be able to properly articulate it and to bring you on a ride with me. So that's all for this episode. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.